Page 17 is going to be our last set of notes for this quarter, and we are going to move on to average rate of change. So this should be page 17, and the goal is to be able to calculate and interpret the average rate of change of a given function. And then we are going to have two definitions. The first is for a ratio, and this should be a vocabulary term that you should be familiar with. A ratio is a fraction that compares two quantities. And usually we see them as fractions, like if we're comparing three dogs to 4 animals total, like 3/4. It can also be like 3:4 or 3:4. But for the most part, we're going to use the fraction, like 3/4. Average rate of change is the ratio of change in the dependent variable to the change in the independent variable. So, average rate of change is the ratio of change in the dependent variable to the independent variable. And we know that a ratio is a fraction. So there is a formula for this, which it would be f of b minus f of a over b minus a. So this is a function of b minus a function of a over b minus a. This is just the proper way to write it. How we're going to remember it is functions, or the dependent variables, are your y values. So we're going to write that as y2 minus y1. That means that b and a are your independent variables. So it would be x2 minus x1. And where have we seen that before? That is just your slope formula. So really what we're doing is we're finding the slope of a given section of a curve. And you can see that down here in example number 1. So we're given this table, and we are asked to find the average rate of change, and they're going to give us an interval to find that average rate of change out of. So normally what I do is I take the x values that they give me and I rewrite them as points. So when x is 0, f of x is 3. So we're going to find the slope from 0, 3. When x is 4, f of x is 35. Writing them as points just helps me see this slope formula easier because we've seen that before. So finding the slope would be y2 minus y1. And if you need to write it, you can, over x2 minus x1. So that would give us 35 minus 3 over 4 minus 0. 35 minus 3 is 32. 4 minus 0 is 4. And then what you want to do is reduce. These are both divisible by 4. And we are left with 8 over 1. Now notice the average rate of change is a ratio, which means it's a fraction. So you are going to want to leave this as 8 over 1. So go ahead and try part B by yourself. I would pause the video and see if you can get it right, and then play the video to see if you got it right. So again, I'm going to write x when x is 1, f of x is 8. When x is 3, f of x is 30. I'm going to write that as two separate points. That just helps me because we have been plugging into slope, x2 minus x1. So then y2 minus y1 is 30 minus 8 over x2 minus x1, which is 3 minus 1. So 30 minus 8 is 22. 3 minus 1 is 2. These are both divisible by 2, which leaves us with 11 over 1. So again, average rate of change is pretty easy. You're just using the slope formula that we're used to over a given interval of x values. So make sure that your page 17 is complete and looks like this.